You're kind of busy, you're running a multi-billion-dollar company. Like, what made you want to make time for this?
I never wanted to be one of those CEOs that's kind of an ivory tower, just looking at data and spreadsheets all day. When you first build a company, you make something usually for yourself. People aren't just numbers, they're people. And that means that you need to be emotionally connected to what you're doing. I understand when hosts are complaining about something or your customers complaining, what do they mean? So that's like the main reason I did it. But then there was another reason I wasn't expecting, which was it's fun.
It was crazy to think you were going to rent your house to a stranger or that you were going to stay in some stranger's house. And now it's just what we do.
Yeah.
Does the level of human openness to that idea still surprise you?
I think I'm less a visionary than an expeditionary in the sense that I didn't have a vision. I discovered something. One weekend I couldn't pay rent. I decided to let people in my house, only to make money for the most part. I thought it'd be fun. And I ended up becoming friends with these people. And it made me realize that like these homes are these private spaces that you never let anyone in, but you understand why. There's no trust. And we thought, well, if we could solve a system of trust and make them not feel like strangers, this would be an idea that's spread on the world. I think we have trouble imagining sociological change is sometimes harder than technological changes. We can all imagine things getting bigger, faster, but it's hard to imagine us changing behavior.
But Airbnb has actually been a big part of like maybe a major sociological change.
Probably. I mean, it's been used 1.4 billion times. And if you had told me when we first started that 1.4 billion people from 220 countries and regions would live together, that on a typical night, we'd have nearly the population of Los Angeles staying together. People from the Middle East and Texas, like cultures you wouldn't necessarily think mixing together. I think we all would have said you were crazy. It's like most tech companies have to understand laws of physics. We call these first principles. And we also have to know a different law, which is a law of human nature. Like, who are we at a very basic level? And if you can start to understand that, then you can start to design for people.
You know, obviously the pandemic hits, travel comes to a screeching halt, the majority of your revenue almost vanishes. Also, nobody wants to see other people.
Right.
In that moment, did it feel like you were standing on the edge of a cliff?
I thought we had made it before the pandemic. You know, we had a business that was doing like, let's call it $35 billion in sales. That's more than Starbucks. That's almost like the size of Nike. If you had told me in like the 1980s growing up, we'd have a business that big, like, you're totally crazy. I thought we're working an IPO. To then lose 80% of it in 8 weeks. I mean, you remember there were articles like, is this the end of Airbnb? Will Airbnb exist? I gotta tell you, like that changed my life. And it changed my life and the company for the better.
How?
You ever hear people say like they had a near-death experience and they had this moment of clarity? Well, thankfully I've never had that, but I felt like I got that clarity from the business perspective.
How did you change as a person?
We'll see. My hair is a little grayer, but I think I really grew up during the pandemic. I think I felt my responsibility more. Employees were worried about their jobs. Investors were worried about their investment. Guests were worried about if they could get their money back when they're traveling. And they were all reaching out to me at the same time. And not in a low-key, composed way. And I remember my board member, Ken Chenault, who's the CEO of Amex, he was CEO during 9/11 in the financial crisis 2008. And he basically said, I've been through two of the biggest crises of my lifetime, and this is 10 times bigger than either of them. He said, this is your defining moment as a CEO. And I think I had lessons that have now been seared in my brain, and I'm never going to forget them.
What are the lessons?
So the first thing I learned is who people really are. The good news is that the vast majority of people turned out to be great people. I learned to focus the entire company and point them, every single person, to one direction. And I learned to stop apologizing about how I want to run the company. Because you hire people and they come from Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and they bring their way with them. And what I realized I was doing was trying to find some midpoint between how I wanted to run the company and how they wanted to run the company, which actually made everyone miserable. It's like I had to go into wartime mode. And the crazy thing was, is as I took more command, more control, became more decisive, more bossy, so to speak, I think people were happier because they had